look at these two keyboards and tell me the difference between them. You can't. At first glance, they look identical. But what if I told you that one of these costs less and might even be better than the other? This is the RD75, the best keyboard of 2024 and 2025 so far. It came from a no-name company named Womier, who pretty much combined every feature that someone would want in a keyboard and launched it during a crowdfunding project, and it made just under $1.5 million. Now a year later, this copycat keyboard launches in Kickstarter, but only made $43,000. Even though this new keyboard, the Womier RD75, might actually be better. So when you look at the two, they're eerily familiar. They have the exact same layout, and if you go down the feature list line by line, pretty much the same. Although there's some new surprises that the RD75 offers too. Now this kind of behavior is nothing new. I've been reviewing keyboards for over 4 years now, and this happens very regularly. But here's the thing, when a company copies the good stuff and makes it better, it ends up being a win-win for us, the people who actually buy the product, especially if they can make it more affordable too, which Womier does, since you can find the RD75 for $118. So the real question is, did they actually make it better? Can this dethrone the Rainy as the best keyboard? And more importantly, is it worth your money? This video is not sponsored, although Womier did send me this keyboard for review. Now when I first got this keyboard, I couldn't help but wonder, why am I even making this video? It looks exactly like 80% of the keyboards that came out last year. Nothing new or original, just another one of those. But as I started to use it more, it grew on me quite a bit, and it actually fixes a lot of the problems that I had with the Rainy. So Womier clearly did their homework, or rather, they copied everyone else's homework and combined it all into one big mega keyboard. And then that got me thinking, could this actually be the best keyboard of 2025? Did I speak too soon about the Rainy? Let's find out. So like most keyboards that launch nowadays, the Womier RD75 is smaller and saves you desk space without sacrificing too many keys. It's a 75% layout, it's got dedicated arrow keys, a full function row, and 5 nav keys. And if you don't like wires, it can connect wirelessly too, which we'll go into detail later. Now, have I mentioned that it's a super heavy keyboard made out of CNC aluminum, a full 4 pounds and 4 ounces? Yes, just like the Rainy. On the back is where this thing starts to stand apart, with its first major upgrade from the RD75. It looks like nothing special at first. It's got no patterns, no mirrors, no cool colors. It's literally a stainless steel weight, until you realize that this little badge actually comes off to reveal a secret compartment that stores your 214 GHz dongle, and this is a magnetic cover to keep it secure when you're not using it. Now, you'll never misplace your wireless dongle ever again. Now, the Rainy does not have anywhere to store your dongle. The next thing can make or break which keyboard you choose, and it all comes down to the typing experience. The Womier RD75 has a subdued and deeper pitch sound compared to the Rainy, which has a loud poppy sound. On both keyboards, the big keys aren't rattly at all, which means you won't have to mod any of these. But you can't just decide based off sound. How does it feel? Both are supposed to be flexible and bouncy when typing, but the RD75 has an issue. If you press really hard, you'll notice it's still quite flexible, but you hardly feel it while typing. And despite having almost the exact same internals, which you'll see later, the typing experience is significantly different. But there's an additional feature that most other keyboards don't have, which I'm excited to try out later. But first, there's something a bit off with the way these switches feel. So this didn't bother me at first, but after a few days of using it, I finally noticed it. If you're looking for a keyboard with snappy, responsive switches, the RD75 delivers. It uses Womier's full palm switches, which is a material known for its smoothness and deep sound profile. The switches come in 2 options, beige and gray. The beige switches are locked to the silver and beige colorways, while the gray switches come with the black and blue models only. So you can't just pick your color, then pick your switch, it's locked. Although the RD75 is hot swappable, so both switches are pre-lubed to minimize scratchiness, with the gray switches being 5 grams heavier, so this can get fatiguing over longer typing sessions. But here's where things start to fall apart. Despite being factory pre-lubed, these switches feel noticeably scratchy. And at first, I thought I was feeling things. But after comparing it directly next to a Rainy, they definitely are scratchy. Now you could buy other switches and put in the ones you want, but ain't nobody got time for that. Speaking of things that you don't notice at first, the keycaps also have something strange afoot. At first, everything looks fine, perfectly fine. The keycap legends are clean, easy to see, and crispy. The tritone keycaps are beautiful in all of their colorways, as each color keyboard includes a different set of keycaps. But once you turn on the keyboard, something is off. Some of the legends are shine through while others aren't. And it's not intentional. Nowhere on the sales page does it say shine through keycaps. These are double shot PBT keycaps, so there's 2 layers of plastic that emerge together. Now it feels like the plastic of the legends is significantly thinner, and that's why the RGB bleeds through. And because the LEDs are south facing, meaning they're on the bottom of the switch, the shine through is especially uneven. But this doesn't happen on all the keys. Keys like enter and escape don't have this problem at all, whereas the white and the blue ones do. This isn't a normal thing. I haven't seen it in any other keyboards that I've reviewed, even the super duper budget ones. So did they cheap out on the keycaps by using thin plastic? Maybe. If you don't use RGB though, you won't notice a thing. Doesn't really matter. It's one of those details that you never expect to see, yet here we are. So if this bothers you, you can always change out the keycaps. But again, ain't nobody got time for that. So what we do have time for is to check out all of the accessories in the box. First, we have 3 extra keycaps. If you want dual tone keycaps instead of tritone, you can get rid of the dark blue entirely. There's also 3 extra switches in case one of yours break. If you don't want to use the dongle holder underneath the keyboard, you can use the one that attaches like a keycap. You also get 3 matte keycaps in colors that make absolutely 0 sense. Not sure what you're thinking here, Womier, but I will not be using these. Then there's this simple white USB-C cable, super basic, and an extra silver colored magnetic cover for the backside, and a simple keycap and switch puller. But don't forget these little guys. They will revolutionize our typing experience. In theory, this is going to let us change the feel of the keyboard, but will it make a difference? Now let's take a look inside the case, because this is where things really start to get interesting. Taking apart this keyboard is easier than before with the ball catch mechanism. You just take your fingers, pry the top case open, and it takes less than 5 seconds. Boom. There's no cables at all. Thank the keyboard lords. This has a magnetic pogo connector, which the Rainy doesn't have, and it lets you connect the PCB to the batteries and the daughter board. All you do is align this piece with the bottom piece, and boom. That's it. At the bottom, there's 2 4,000 milliampere hour batteries, which makes battery life pretty good. So I've been using this keyboard completely wirelessly the entire week without a problem whatsoever with RGB on. Yeah, I live dangerously. But everything else looks super familiar. There's a PET sheet, there's pour-on foam inside the case. In between the plate and a PCB, you get an IXPE sheet and plate foam as well. And the PCB has these orange tadpole gaskets on it that are supposed to give it a bouncy feeling. Now for a cool magic trick. Remember the extra gaskets that this comes with? Well, you can replace the tadpoles for these bigger gaskets. But if we're being completely honest, it doesn't change up the feel at all. Like at all. But the PCB makes up for it for you folks that are in Europe. If you're looking for an ISO option, you can modify this keyboard to fit your needs. The PCB has hot swappable sockets that lets you have an ISO enter and a stepped caps lock. But there's no split left shift for a real ISO layout. However, you have to buy the plate separately to accommodate those differences. So there's a lot of customization options, but in terms of buying options, you're pretty limited. On Amazon, you get 3 colors. On Womier's website, you get 4 colors, and that's it. There's no tactile switches, no clicky options, no silent options. The Rainy has way more colors and options and different price points too. For Womier, you could buy additional accessories like more plates. You can get an ISO plate, you can get a PB plate, and you can even choose a plate without flex cuts. Now, a keyboard isn't just about how it looks or feels, you also have to think about how it works. If you're missing out on some core functionality in your keyboard, it'll just end up being an expensive and heavy paperweight. This is where software and connectivity come into play. Now with this keyboard, you won't have to download any sketchy software. That's because it uses VIA. It's a browser-based software that just needs an internet connection and a JSON file, which you can download from their website. And inside it, you can change your lighting settings, you can remap keys, you can set macros. It has 4 layers, so you got a Mac layer and then a function layer above that. This is something that we're seeing more and more lately with new keyboard releases, and the Rainy also has VIA. For connectivity, you get Bluetooth, 2.4G or wired, and toggling between the 3 is pretty easy. All you have to do is hold FN and 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 for each mode. But that's after you turn the keyboard on. You have to turn it on by taking off the caps lock key and then putting your fingernail in to turn it on. Now companies need to stop doing this. Just add a toggle switch somewhere on the surface. How hard could it be? So I'm gonna be honest, I did not want to cover this keyboard initially at all. Why? Well, I've had a bad experience with Womier before with another keyboard called the RD75, and I bought it myself and it arrived bricked. I contacted customer support and they've been less than helpful. It's still sitting in some corner somewhere and it's working, but only wirelessly. Now eventually I did get them to send me a new one after giving them a hard time. But this is different. It's a Womier RD75 and on paper, it checks every box and more. It has features that the Rainy doesn't, like the dongle holder, the rapid disassembly with the ball catch mechanism. It's got no ribbon cables. It's quieter. And it's cheaper too at $118. But does that make it the best keyboard of 2025 so far? The Womier RD75 is an ambitious attempt to improve on the best. And being the best isn't just about a list of features. In pursuit of checking all the boxes, they overlooked some basics, such as the switches and the keycaps. So even though on paper it's better, it misses out on the crucial details that actually matter when using a keyboard. And that's where the Rainy 75 shines. It nails all the small features. It's also over a year old instead of just 3 months. Tens of thousands of people have bought it and used it happily. Sure, it's not perfect. They've got problems too, but it's a safer choice. So while the RD75 may look better, it's still too soon to recommend it thoroughly. So here's what the RD75 sounds like, followed by the Rainy 75. And if you're looking for a slightly bigger keyboard with more layout options and a bigger budget, check out the Crush 80, the Rainy's bigger sibling. It also checks all of the feature boxes.